Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every life when the noise quiets, the distractions fade, and we're left with a single, life-defining question. What will I decide today? You see, we often believe change is some massive event, a breakthrough, a windfall, a miracle. But the truth, the deep and empowering truth, is this: you're one decision away from changing your life forever. Let that sink in. Not 10 decisions, not 10 years, just one. The most successful, fulfilled people are not the luckiest or the most gifted. They are the ones who decided. They decided they were no longer going to let their past dictate their future. They decided to choose discipline over distraction, growth over fear, purpose over comfort. And that decision? It didn't come with a spotlight. It wasn't announced with applause. It happened quietly in the mirror, in a moment of honesty, in a whisper of courage. Education teaches us that knowledge is power, but it's not the knowledge that changes your life. It's what you do with it. It's the moment you stop saying, "I'll try," and start saying, "I will." It's the second you stop waiting for permission and start giving yourself authority to rise. So the question is not, can you change your life? The question is, will you decide to? Because every mountain you want to climb, every dream you've tucked away, every version of you that you admire from afar is already possible, already waiting, already within reach. It just needs one thing from you: a decision. We often underestimate the power of a single choice. In fact, many people go through life not realizing that decisions, not circumstances, shape destinies. The environment we are born into, the challenges we face, the resources we have or don't have, these things may influence our path, but they do not determine our future. What truly defines us is the quality and courage of our decisions. Think about the turning points in your life, both the big moments and the subtle ones. Maybe it was the decision to apply for a job you didn't feel qualified for, or the decision to end a relationship that was holding you back. Perhaps it was the moment you chose to go back to school, to start something new, or to stand up for yourself after years of staying quiet. Every one of those moments had one thing in common. They began with a decision. Choice is the beginning of transformation. Not the end result, not the outcome, the beginning. That's an important distinction. Because when we believe we need to have everything figured out before we start, we paralyze ourselves. We wait for the perfect time, the perfect plan, the perfect conditions. And in waiting, we miss the moment that could have changed everything. The truth is, transformation doesn't require perfection. It requires direction. A decision is your declaration to the world, and more importantly, to yourself, that you are no longer willing to stay where you are, that you're ready to move forward even if the road is unclear. When you decide with intention, you give your mind permission to focus, your heart permission to believe, and your energy permission to align. Let's take this a step further. When we talk about decisions, we often think they have to be monumental. But some of the most powerful choices are quiet, consistent, and deeply personal. Choosing to wake up an hour earlier to work on your dream. Choosing to say no to distractions. Choosing to believe that your voice matters even if it shakes when you speak. These choices don't make headlines, but they build habits. And habits shape identity. The most transformative decisions are rarely made in moments of ease. They are born in discomfort, in frustration, in moments when you've had enough of staying stuck. When you recognize that staying the same is more painful than the fear of change. That's where true decisions come from, not the surface level kind, but the soul deep commitments that alter the course of your life. And here's the beauty. Every person has this power. It doesn't matter what your background is, what mistakes you've made, or how long you've been off track. At any given moment you can decide. That is the essence of free will. That is the gift of being human. It's also important to understand that a decision is not just a thought, it's a commitment backed by action. Saying I want to change is not the same as deciding to change. Wanting keeps you in motion. Deciding sets your direction. One is hope. The other is ownership, and ownership is where power lives. In an educational sense, if we were to study the most successful individuals across fields, backgrounds, and cultures, we'd find one common thread. At some point, each of them made a decision to step into a new version of themselves. They chose to leave comfort for growth, and they did so without knowing the outcome. That's what makes a decision powerful. Not that it guarantees success, but that it opens the door to it. So the next time you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or uncertain, remember this: you don't need a full plan. You don't need 100 steps. You need one decision. A decision to show up, to try, to change. Because you are one choice away, not from perfection, but from progress. One decision away from beginning again. One decision away from changing your life forever. One of the greatest misconceptions people carry through life is the belief that their circumstances define their future. That where they were born, how they were raised, the opportunities they did or didn't have, or the mistakes they've made somehow determine the limits of what they can achieve. It's a heavy narrative, one that often keeps people stuck in cycles of self-doubt, blame, and resignation. But the truth is, far more empowering, your current situation is not your final destination. What defines you is not what happened to you, but how you choose to respond to it. Responsibility is often misunderstood. Many see it as a burden, something that weighs heavily on the shoulders. But when understood correctly, responsibility is liberation. It's the key that unlocks your power, because when you take full ownership of your life, the good, the bad, the broken, the beautiful, you step into a place where real change is possible. You stop waiting for someone else to fix it, save you, or give you permission. You stop making excuses based on your circumstances, and you start making moves based on your values. Let's be clear, circumstances do matter. They shape the environment you grow in, the challenges you face, the resources you have access to. Some people start on third base, while others are still trying to get into the game. That's reality. But responsibility is not about denying that reality. It's about choosing not to be defined by it. It's saying, yes, this is where I am, but it's not where I'll stay. That shift in mindset is powerful. Education teaches us to analyze situations, to solve problems, to think critically. But the most important lesson life will teach you is this: your response is more important than your situation. You may not control everything that happens to you. None of us do. But you do control what happens next. You control your attitude, your effort, your next step. And over time, those choices compound into a life you either take pride in or regret. There's a certain kind of strength that comes from realizing that even when things fall apart, even when life feels unfair, you still get to choose how you show up. That mindset separates those who grow from those who stay stuck. Blame is easy. It's comfortable, familiar. It keeps us from looking in the mirror. But blame also keeps us powerless. Responsibility, on the other hand, is uncomfortable at first. It forces us to face ourselves. But in that discomfort lies growth. In that growth lies freedom. When you stop saying, "I can't because of my past," and start saying, "I will in spite of it," you reclaim your story. When you stop saying, "No one help me," and start saying, "I will help myself," you begin to lead your life with intention. These are not small mental shifts. They are radical acts of self-respect. You were not born to be a prisoner of circumstance. You were born to be the author of your own life. Every person you admire, every success story you've heard, every comeback you've witnessed, at the core of it all, was someone who took responsibility for their next move, regardless of what came before. So ask yourself, are you allowing your current situation to speak louder than your vision? Are you giving more power to what's behind you than what's ahead of you? The moment you stop doing that, the moment you take back that power, everything changes. Not because the world changes instantly, but because you do. Your mindset shifts. Your energy shifts. Your decisions begin to align with the future you want, not the past you survived. Where you are now doesn't define you. Where you go from here does. Let responsibility lead the way, not to perfection, but to progress. Because once you realize you hold the pen, you stop living by default and start living by design. Fear is a powerful force. It often doesn't show up loudly or dramatically. Most of the time, fear whispers. It speaks in the voice of logic. It wears the mask of caution. It sounds like, "Now isn't the right time," or "What if it doesn't work out?" or "Let's be realistic." And because of that, it often goes unnoticed. It becomes part of our thinking, part of our decision-making. We confuse fear for wisdom. We call it being practical. But in reality, it's one of the most subtle and dangerous things standing between where we are and where we want to be. Fear isn't always the loud, obvious kind. It's often disguised in daily choices, in hesitations, in procrastination, in the refusal to step outside the familiar. It tells you to stay where it feels safe, even if that place isn't fulfilling. It convinces you that trying and failing is worse than never trying at all. And that mindset doesn't just hold you back, it builds a wall between you and your growth. Growth, on the other hand, lives in a completely different space. It doesn't reside in comfort. It doesn't thrive in certainty. Growth requires stepping into the unknown. It requires making decisions without guarantees. It asks you to trust yourself in situations where you don't have all the answers. And that's not easy, but it's necessary. We grow the most when we stretch ourselves, when we challenge our thinking, when we step into spaces that feel uncomfortable. Just like muscles grow through resistance, people grow through challenge. Avoiding fear doesn't make it go away, it makes it stronger. Facing fear, even in small steps, weakens its grip and builds your confidence. In an educational context, think of how learning works. You don't master a subject by staying where you're comfortable. You master it by tackling hard problems, by asking questions, by making mistakes, and learning from them. Personal growth works the same way. You have to be willing to feel uncertain. You have to embrace the discomfort that comes with doing something new or unfamiliar. That's how you expand. But fear is clever. It speaks in the language of your values. It tells you that staying in your current job is the responsible thing, even if it's draining your soul. It tells you not to start that business or take that risk. Because what will people think if you fail? It tries to protect you, but in doing so, it keeps you small. And the sad truth is, many people live their entire lives in that small space, mistaking safety for success. The key is not to eliminate fear. That's not realistic. Fear is part of being human. The key is to learn how to move with it, to recognize it when it shows up in your thoughts, your choices, your excuses. To ask yourself, is this really me thinking? Or is this fear wearing a disguise? And then, to lean toward growth anyway. The magic happens when you make that choice. When you feel the fear, acknowledge it and still take the step. When you understand that the risk of staying the same is greater than the risk of change. Because yes, growth is uncomfortable, but so is regret. So is waking up a year from now, realizing you're still in the same place because you let fear make your decisions for you. Every breakthrough, every evolution, every leap forward requires you to go through a season of stretching. It requires you to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because growth doesn't ask if you're ready. It asks if you're willing. And once you realize that fear is just a signal, not a stop sign, you begin to unlock a whole new level of possibility. The life you want, the person you want to become, the dreams you keep pushing aside, they all live on the other side of that fear. So don't run from it. Don't let it disguise itself and steer your path. Stand up to it, question it, and then choose growth anyway. That's where your real progress begins. We often romanticize success. We imagine it as this grand moment, a single powerful leap that catapults someone from where they are to where they want to be. It's tempting to believe that all it takes is one bold move. One viral moment, one big break. But in reality, success rarely happens that way. It doesn't come as a sudden explosion. It's built slowly, steadily, and often quietly through a series of small, intentional steps, and it all starts with the first one. The first step is often the hardest. It's the step taken when there's no applause, no audience, no guarantee of outcome. It's the one that happens when your vision is bigger than your current reality, when your faith must be louder than your fear. And yet, it's the most important one you'll ever take, not because it completes the journey, but because it begins it. Taking the first step is not about having everything figured out. It's not about perfection or precision. It's about movement. Momentum. It's about saying to yourself, I may not know the whole path, but I trust myself enough to begin. That simple act, that moment of movement creates a shift. It breaks the cycle of overthinking. It pushes you past procrastination. It gets you out of your head and into your life. In an educational context, this is much like learning a new subject or starting a new course. At first, you may not understand the material. It may feel overwhelming. But once you show up, read the first page. Ask the first question. Solve the first problem, you start building understanding. With every small step, clarity grows, confidence follows. And eventually, what once felt impossible becomes routine. The same applies to your dreams, your goals, your personal growth. Too often, people wait for clarity before they take action, not realizing that clarity is a result of action. You learn more by doing than by thinking about doing. You discover your direction not by standing still, but by walking forward and adjusting as you go. That first step reveals the next, and the next. And slowly, the path begins to take shape. There's also a powerful truth about consistency. Small choices, repeated with discipline, shape your future more than any single event ever could. The decision to read for 10 minutes a day, the choice to save a small amount of money regularly, the commitment to speak kindly to yourself even when things go wrong. These don't seem dramatic in the moment, but over time, they become habits. Habits become behavior. Behavior becomes lifestyle. Lifestyle becomes legacy. Taking the first step also requires courage, not because it's physically difficult, but because it often comes with self-doubt. You wonder if you're ready, if you're good enough, if people will support you. But courage is not the absence of doubt. It's the decision to move forward in spite of it. It's saying, I might stumble, but I'm still going. And that kind of courage compounds. The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Don't underestimate the power of one small step. It may feel insignificant, but it's the seed from which everything else grows. You don't climb a mountain by jumping to the top. You climb it by putting one foot in front of the other, again and again, even when it's hard, even when it's slow. And every step matters. So, if you're standing at the edge wondering whether to begin, let this be your sign. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to decide that where you are now is not where you're going to stay. And then take one small, brave, clear step forward. Because success is not in the leap. It's in the first step and every step after that. Ladies and gentlemen, everything you dream of becoming, everything you hope to change, everything you know deep down you were meant to do, all of it begins with one decision. Not a perfect one, not a loud one, just a clear, intentional, honest decision. The decision to believe in the power of your choice, even when the odds seem against you. The decision to stop letting your circumstances write your story and start taking responsibility for every chapter ahead. The decision to stop calling fear logic and to start naming it for what it is: resistance to your growth. And above all, the decision to simply begin to take that first small step, even when the path isn't fully visible. You don't have to wait for permission. You don't need more time. You don't need to be more ready than you are right now, because in this moment you already hold the key. The truth is, you're not waiting on a sign from the world is waiting on a signal from you. So choose. Choose to rise. Choose to grow. Choose to begin. Because you are, and always will be, one decision away from changing your life forever. Thank you